Hey everybody, I want to spend some time today talking about a new DAX function that I happened to stumble across the other day that is incredibly useful, and the weird thing about it is it's almost entirely undocumented. So I wanted to go through what it is and what it does and show you how I use it. So I happened to be in the SQL BI DAX guide the other day, doing some research for a project, and I came across this function that I didn't recognize called column statistics. And if you look at it, it just says provide statistics regarding every column in every table of the model. And that sounds super useful. So I went to the Microsoft August update, because it says here first release August 19th, 2021. And I hadn't heard anything about this. So I went to the Microsoft release, and this is a full list of all the August 2021 updates, and there's no mention of it whatsoever. And so I Googled it, and beyond the DAX guide, the SQL BI DAX guide, there's nothing I can find about it. So I've been experimenting with it and want to show you what I found and what I've been doing with it. So what we'll do is we'll set up a test database, and what I like to do is use the Enterprise DNA Practice Dataset tool. And so we'll turn that on and let that chug through and just create a small 3-year data set. Just a standard sales, products, customers, star schema model. We'll let that chug for a minute. Okay, and so when that's finished processing, you'll see we've got just a standard star schema data model with 5 dimension tables, a single fact table, and a small measures table. So let's take a look at how this function works, and in some cases how it doesn't. So if you remember from the SQL BI citation, it says that column statistics creates a table. So let's see if we can jump in and create a new table to show what that function produces. So let's create a calculated table. We'll call it column stats, and you'll notice that as I type that in, IntelliSense doesn't recognize it, which is a little bit of a red flag right off the bat. So let's hit return here. And what we get is something that, when you think about it, is actually not unexpected. So we get this message that says a circular dependency was detected. And so if you think about what this function is doing, it's stepping through each of the tables in the model and creating statistics on the fields. And so what it's doing here is it's actually trying to create statistics on this table itself. The column statistics table. And so that's creating that circular dependency. So that's not going to work. So then my next thought was, what about if we use, instead of creating this as a physical calculated table, what if we create it as a calculated virtual table? So that it's not actually looping back on itself in circular dependency. So let's go to measures, create a new measure. And let's just try something simple here. So let's just try counting the rows of this column statistics table. So stats equals just a simple count rows, and then we'll type. And not worry about the fact that IntelliSense doesn't recognize that. And we'll close out our parentheses and commit that code. And let's try putting that into say a card visual. So let's drop that in and turn it into a card. And that actually works. So we can see we've got 71 rows in that column statistics table. So it's calculating properly in that virtual environment. So let's take a look now at how we can extract that data. And so if we can't create a table, maybe what we can do is go in and do it as a DAX query. So let's go into, in this case, DAX Studio, because we're going to want to output this to a file, and DAX Studio does a really nice job on that. So let's set our output here to Excel, and we'll create a static Excel table, and let's create a DAX query. And DAX queries that produce tables start with evaluate. And even DAX Studio doesn't recognize this yet as a valid statement. But when we hit run, it actually seems to work. And so let's create that to the desktop. As an Excel file. 71 rows returned, so that's looking good. And let's jump back to Power BI into our sample data model. And so let's now take that Excel table that we created and let's pull that in. And we get this query 1. We can take a look at that, and that looks good. That's exactly what it says it was going to do, is basically produce information about each column in each table. So we'll pull that in, and we'll go to transform. And the first thing we're going to have to do is just use first row as headers. And now let's take that query 1 table, the results, and let's rename that to column statistics. And we'll close and apply. And let's create a new page. And then let's take the table name and drag that into a slicer. And we'll make that a single select. And then what we can do is let's take the rest of the data and pull that into a table. So we'll start with column name. And let's just add min, max length, and cardinality. And so now what we've got is actually something I think is quite useful, so that instead of having to go back into the table view and scan for the fields you want, you can just click through in the course of your development, and you can see all the summary statistics for all the columns. And now one of the things that's super cool about this is that now, because this is all in a physical table, in your DAX measures, you can now reference this, and you can count your tables, you can count number of fields per table, you can, in virtual tables, you can create lists of column names and do all sorts of checks against the structure of your model. So I think this is something that, as we continue to experiment with, we're going to find new and better uses for. If you've got some other discoveries you've made with regard to column statistics, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Just a brief addendum to this video. If you were watching closely, you saw originally when we did the count rows measure that the card value was 71 rows. But then we went back into Power Query and did some transformation and renamed the table. When it flashed by, it was 78 rows. And so I wanted to just briefly explain why that was, because what happens in the processing of this column statistics is it automatically adds a row for each table. So we've got 7 tables, and it adds a row that is this row number. It's basically just an index number with the max cardinality. And so That's the discrepancy between the 71 that we saw originally and the 78 we saw after we ran it through Power Query. So just wanted to highlight that just in case you were watching and wondering where that difference came from. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Enterprise DNA TV. If you enjoyed the content covered in this particular tutorial, please throw the video a like. It really helps us and we really appreciate it. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Enterprise DNA TV channel. We have a huge amount of content coming out all the time from myself and a range of content creators, all dedicated to improving the way that you use Power BI and the Power Platform. Lastly, check out Enterprise DNA's website. Plenty of resources and further learning that you can access very easily. All the best. Take care.